what we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. I mean, we've seen in our own neighborhood, you don't have to be a big country to be a risky country. I have some smaller neighbors who IT for India means information technology. Yeah. For Pakistan means international terrorism. At some stage, the Americans said, "Ab bahut ho gaya, we are leaving." Done a pretty good job. When it suits you to deal with the Taliban, they are okay.
S. Jaishankar, a few days ago, you gave an interview to the Financial Times where you said, and I quote, "If we don't have an order, then you are looking at a very anarchic world, very Hobbesian." But you also said, and this was the headline of the article, in fact, the virtues of the old order, of the old world order, are exaggerated. Why are they exaggerated?
Well, first of all, good to be with all of you and with all of you too. Look, I think we do need an international order, just like we need a domestic order. So if you need a society in a country, you need an international version of that. And it's not just big countries who will benefit if there is no order. I would argue that any country which will take risks, which will have extreme positions, which would, test the system, will actually use disorder to its advantage. I mean, we've seen in our own neighborhood, you don't have to be a big country to be a risky country. I have some smaller neighbors who have done a pretty good job at that. So, first of all, I think we should all, understand the importance of an order. Now, the old order, it was an order. It was a product of its times. But why I felt that its virtues were exaggerated was, I think the rule maker and the rule taker had somewhat different perspectives, because I also said in the same interview, if you were at the receiving end of some of those rules or the application of those rules, we had issues. And let me give you 2 or 3 practical examples. If you capriciously, if it suits your interest, somebody is good, not good, well, I'll make up my mind how they're going to do. And you apply that order to the same country on the same issues differently. Take Afghanistan. Okay. So the same Afghanistan, the same Taliban, which was an outlier, was welcomed in the Doha process, was welcomed in Oslo. Apparently, at that time, people were okay with it. Today, again, we are going back saying, Taliban is doing all these not so good things. Now, if they were doing all of that, what was discussed in Oslo and Doha? You had a British general who described them at that time as, well, they are country boys with their own honor code. Now, so when it suits you to deal with the Taliban, they are okay. When it is not, they're not okay. You are an extremist today, you wear a suit and tie, you are okay. I think I have a problem with that order. Let's give you a second example. We all speak of sovereignty and territorial integrity. All of us agree. It's a vital principle. It's the bedrock of global rules. After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA. So, pardon me, I have some question marks on that whole order. Now, I can give you many more. We speak today of political interference. When the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention. So, I think we need, if to have an order, there must be fairness. I agree with you, Dominic. We need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN. A strong, a global order must have some, some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no. We have them even more regularly to the west. You know where? They seem to be okay. So I think it's important to audit the working of the world for the last 8 decades and be honest about it, and to understand today that the balances, the shareholdings in the world have changed. We need a different conversation. We need, frankly, in that sense, a different role.
Built a new relationships which were not there before, like Australia, UAE, Israel, and then there was another country, Pakistan, about which we used to talk every day in past. Now we hardly talk. So what has changed?
India has changed. I wish I could say Pakistan has changed. They unfortunately are in many ways continuing the bad habits. They are continuing a very negative way of approaching India. And what has happened is today, I think, when I look back, I would say the 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attack, I would regard it in many ways as the turning point. I think that was when Indian public opinion across political parties, average Indians said, this is now too much. The country cannot accept this kind of behavior from a neighbor. Now, I think that feeling was very, very strong in society. It may not have been entirely understood at that time by the government of the day. That's a different matter. But if you see after 2014, when the government changed, this message has been very firm with Pakistan, which is that terrorism, if acts of terrorism are committed, there will be consequences. Now, what has happened also during this period? We have forged ahead. We have forged ahead economically, politically. Our standing in the world has gone up. I think they have, in a way, continued the old playbook. Now, for them, unfortunately, also what happened was they were trying to extract something from Afghanistan, which was the Americans and the NATO were in Afghanistan. So Pakistan was playing a double game. It was with the Taliban and the Afghan, those opposed to the Americans, and it was also playing with. Now, every double game comes to an end. अब उनका भी वही हुआ. That some stage the Americans said, अब बहुत हो गया, we are leaving. Now, when they left, the double game could not be sustained. So whatever benefits they were getting out of the double game, that also went down. In fact, then they discovered they had a further problem, which was the very people, the very terrorism industry, which they had followed, came back to bite them. That today they are facing, the actions of people whom they promoted. So, from their point of view, you can say old habits have continued. The opportunities of the world have, passed them by. The reputation is determined by their actions and their habits. And many things which they thought they were being very smart has actually come back to bite them. Whereas what we have done is We have separated ourselves. We have gone up to a higher level. We are today, I mean, if you go out in the world, you know, it's a joke, but it's not really a joke, which is the sense that IT for India means information technology, for Pakistan means international terrorism.
Terrorism. Yeah.
So that sense today that their branding, the terrorism chap has stuck to them. Today our branding is a technology branding. And I think that is the difference. Ab jo aadmi technology karta hai, naturally he is not going to waste too much, you know, if terrorism happens we will respond. But otherwise why should I devote precious time, you know, to a neighbor who's the way
Bent
their
upon
neighbor
doing
is.
the thing. Back to audience. Any question? Yes, please.
What Europeans could learn from the Indian.
And I'd like to ask you, what does Europe misunderstand about India?
What does Europe misunderstand about India? Look, I'm not sure I would use that word. There are gaps. I mean, I'm not being diplomatic about it. I mean, often we tend to see a degree of judgmentalism based on Europe's own situation. So to the extent Europe, look, you know, Europe has had the good fortune of having a certain strategic comfort for multiple decades. You know, for a continent which saw so much violence and bloodshed, then you've had really 70, 80 years. Yes, there have been some issues. Yugoslavia was one. I mean, what's happening right now in Ukraine is another. But by and large, Europe has enjoyed a period of peace, prosperity, stability, security, and complacency, which came out of it. So now Europe is compelled by global developments to perhaps conceptualize its own interests more sharply and then see how it can secure that optimally. So some of our debates is, you know, a region which is very secure finds it very hard to understand another which is going through very difficult challenges. So whether it is on an issue like terrorism, whether it is even on matters like, you know, territorial, I would say, integrity and sanctity of borders. We have not always had the kind of understanding and support that we expected out of Europe. So I think today the strategic reawakening of Europe has created the basis for much more serious conversations on many more subjects, especially matters relating to security and strategy. Also the economics and I would say the demographics are bringing us together. That when I look, for example, at a country like Germany, when Chancellor Schulz was here in October, a lot of our conversations with him and his team actually revolved around, you know, skilled mobility of skilled talent to support German industry and German tech. So there are strong convergences. I think those convergences will grow with the passage of time. And certainly when we speak of a multipolar world, for us it's very important that Europe is a pole and thinks of itself as a pole. So for that reason, I'm actually somewhat optimistic of the turn of events. On the US and China, look, our experiences are very different. Some of it flows from what I said about Europe, that we've actually seen both extremes. For the first few decades after independence, very sharp contestation between US and China and getting caught in the middle of it. And then even worse, deep collaboration between US and China and being at the wrong end of it. So neither situation for us. So it's kind of like a Goldilocks problem, So you want ideally a kind of an optimal situation, but they're not going to oblige the rest of the world. I think we are clearly heading for a period of sharp competition and contestation. And different countries need to plan for it. That planning is going to be much harder. It's going to be much harder because in the past we could insulate sectors, saying, this doesn't matter, this is only trade. It's not political, it's not defense, it's not sensitive. I think what is our definition of what is sensitive has expanded. Nothing is only trade anymore. No investments are as purely, nothing is purely business anymore. Everything is also personal.